but we're going to start with a question about Carlo Ancelotti. So Wamik Jamal says, do you believe any players in the current squad don't fit Carlo Ball? If so, do you think we should offload them or keep them for squad depth given our financial situation?
Interesting question. I think Casemiro and Mendy are the two biggest question marks for Ancelotti, you know, and I think Mendy's inability to move the ball and keep possession and you know all of and distribute the ball overall might be something that Ancelotti doesn't like a lot, and might be actually something that he values in David Alaba if he can actually play as a left back, assuming Varane gets to stay, and Casemiro as well. We've never seen. Well, never is a strong word, but we haven't seen very often Ancelotti playing with a pure defensive midfielder, and he likes a hard worker as a central midfielder. Instead, you know, he likes to keep the ball moving through that defensive midfield possession, and then have a hard worker pressing, like for example Valverde would be perfect in that role. So Casemiro and Mendy are my two biggest question marks, and whether or not Real Madrid should sell them. I've been an advocate, and I've been a bit vocal about the fact that I think Real Madrid should consider selling Mendy. I get it that he's a valuable asset and he's a valuable player to have on your roster, but I think that if you can get 50 million for him, and then obviously this is the biggest if of it all. If you can use that money to buy Mbappe, then I would do it. If it's just for the sake of increasing your budget, and then you cannot sign neither Mbappe nor Haaland, then forget about it. But if you actually need that money to negotiate with PSG, and all of a sudden you receive a 50 million offer for Mendy, I think you have to at least consider it, because I think Alaba might actually be a better candidate than Mendy to start as a left back next season.
I often reference, like, since you said it on the podcast a while ago, I've said it like on a podcast a couple times since, saying like, hey, Lucas had this really great take, and where you said you would drive anyone to the airport if it meant signing Mbappe.
Yeah.
Like, you would part ways with anyone, and no exception. And I agree. I agree with it. So
Courtois is my only question mark, but it's basically, that's basically my idea and my point. I would play with Castilla and then Mbappe if it came down to that.
Yeah, I mean, you still do it, even if it meant sacrificing Courtois. It's like the ultimate, like, at what cost? What are the costs? If it costs everything, it costs everything. Because I really think that somebody like him, you need somebody of that ilk to compete. You don't need somebody like that to compete necessarily, but just given the way Real Madrid have always been designed, they always need a player they need superstars. Because we look back on all of our Champions League titles, and none of them have been won without one of those players. Maybe the exception being the one in the Yaya era, when Gento was old. But everyone, you need that, because Real Madrid are not designed like the way Chelsea are, for example, from a tactical perspective, where you can go in and you can have just all these players who defend super well and they're really organized in their counterattack. They need that. And even Chelsea, by the way, they needed a goal scorer. When you think about it, they kind of got away with a lot of narrow margin victories because of it. Anyways, so it's interesting when you start framing it that way of Casemiro and these guys, could you raise funds? I think most people listen to this podcast, the idea of selling Casemiro is what are you guys talking about? This has never been a thing. It's never even been rumored. Why would we sell Casemiro? And why would you anyway? He's one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. A lot of this will just be kind of theoretical, just talking out loud. It's not, I don't think any of us want to sell Casemiro. But he is a player that I immediately thought of in terms of, and we all thought of it. It's not unique to what I thought of. I think we all thought about him when Carlo was signed. It's he's never played with this destroying defensive midfielder before.
Right.
But I think he can make it work. The biggest parallel I can think of is Gattuso at Milan.
But Gattuso wasn't a defensive midfielder. He was a Valverde, quote unquote.
That's what I was going to basically say, is that he wants his deepest anchor, the deepest midfielder to be a deep lying playmaker, not a destroyer.
Right.
So in Milan, he actually had Pirlo behind Gattuso, and Gattuso was more of that two-way presence, but also did a lot of the dirty work, which I think Valverde can do. Unless you want to put Casemiro in that role. And so but that's part of the reason why Xabi Alonso worked at Real Madrid. I mean, Xabi Alonso will work anywhere because he's Xabi Alonso, but he played Xabi Alonso in that role, but not as a destroyer, as someone who can distribute and basically be press resistant, can create from deep and be the Pirlo. The Mendy one is an interesting one too, because look, every manager in modern football uses their fullbacks, but Ancelotti really uses his fullbacks in attack. And so I do wonder where Mendy fits in that. And I suppose I never thought about it much. To me, Alaba is a left center back at this stage, especially with Ramos gone. But I do wonder if he would value Alaba's attacking input over Mendy and put Mendy on the bench for that reason. And this is another reason, by the way, why I'm not thrilled with it at all. Fabrizio Romano reported today that Real Madrid see Marcelo as an important key player next season. So how do you feel about that, by the way?
First of all, about Alaba playing left back, the big thing here is that you need Varane to stay, obviously, because if Varane leaves, Alaba is pretty much an undisputed starter as a center back next season, because I don't think Militao and Nacho can get it done consistently for 60 games. I mean, they were great. Don't get me wrong, they were great for that last third of the season last year, but in the undisputed starters for Real Madrid for 60 games is an entirely different animal, an entirely different beast, in my opinion. So I think Alaba, if Varane leaves, all of a sudden Alaba is definitely an undisputed starter as a center back, which is, I don't think is his ideal position anyway, because every time I see him crossing the ball on the left flank, I think he's great and natural to play there, and I think he would be great as a left back in opposition to what Mendy can do offensively. But about Marcelo, I don't think he's that kind of player anymore. I don't think even if he's actually able to improve something and a little bit, because all of a sudden Ancelotti keeps him engaged, but I don't think he's going to be a key contender for the starting spot next season. I don't think he's that kind of player anymore.
I don't either, and again I don't like the idea at all. I think
no.
But and I think Alaba's best position is the left center back position, and I still think Mendy is amazing, and I think you can piece together a really good offense from Mendy in non-traditional ways, not as the skillful dribbler, but as the guy who just does overloads and carries the ball and bulldozes you.
Something like Theo Hernandez. Yeah, something like Theo Hernandez, exactly. Yeah,
exactly.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But again, I would say, Kylian, that he's somewhat expendable if Real Madrid keep Varane, and a good offer comes for Mendy, considering that Real Madrid are basically not going to make any money for Isco, Ceballos, Odriozola, Mariano, and those other, even Marcelo and those other players. If Varane stays, basically Mendy and I wouldn't sell Casemiro. Just to make it clear, but Mendy, all of a sudden, if Varane stays, becomes expendable if a good offer comes Madrid's way, in my opinion.
So this is an interesting discussion, and I just want to explore this with you for a little bit. This is kind of deviating from the original question, but just worth talking about. You often hear these reports that Real Madrid have this big plan. They're gonna raise X amount of millions of euros. And it's usually around the 100 million mark that you see reported. And it's okay, here's the plan. Here's the list. We have Isco, we have Marcelo, we have Mariano, blah, 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 goes down the list. And then everyone looks at that list and be but you can't sell those players because no one wants those players. Not at the price you want anyway. But no one ever flips the discussion and be what if we sold players that are good that we actually don't want to sell to raise? If you really want the Haaland Mbappe and you don't have the money, what happens if you start digging into the starters and seeing, what's the cost benefit analysis of replacing Varane with Mbappe, replacing Casemiro with Haaland. I'm just thinking out loud here, but we in the NBA you can't really like land a superstar without giving away a star of your own. You got to those trades usually they're not like you're never going to get you're probably not going to give away or get more than 75 cents on the dollar. You're never going to get equal value, but you got to give up something. And so I'm surprised we never flip it that way. But that report yesterday, Lucas, that Varane, the Athletic reported that Varane could net 40 to 45 million. And I saw that. I was like, are you crazy? For Varane, one of the best defenders we've ever had, and he's in his prime, I'm not accepting that. Unless, the argument is you're going to lose him for free next summer. But
yeah,
that's way too low for Varane, I find. Way too low.
Yeah, I know, but that's basically the current scenario right now. The current scenario right now is that Varane is refusing any kind of offer or to extend his contract, and then Real Madrid will have to take a hard look at the offers that they've been getting for a while and accept the biggest one. And if the biggest one is 40-50 million, then what do you do? Because Varane is not going to. They know that Varane is not going to sign an extension if they reach to that point. So it's been, the Real Madrid don't have a lot of leverage in the Varane situation. So they will have to make a decision.
I think they had leverage that they lost. Like right now, they had the option to give Alaba's salary to Varane, unless you really believe like it's not about money. Like, do you believe that? It has to be the main concern.
Yeah.
No matter what they say.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So
yeah. Your point makes a lot of sense, and ultimately, again, that's my process to make the decision to, here's the money. I give Varane the extension he wants, and then I try to sell Mendy for 40-50 million. And I have Varane and Militao starting in the center with Alaba and Miguel Gutierrez starting as at the left back spot. And I think Real Madrid all of a sudden managed to upgrade the left back spot because I think Alaba will be better than Mendy for Ancelotti in that spot. So that's my process. I think Varane is the key to unlocking that kind of situation. And ultimately, I would do my very best to give Varane the extension he wants, so that I can unlock that scenario I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think if I were Real Madrid, I would keep him. And I would risk losing him for free next summer, just basically relying on the idea that we can convince him to stay in this last year we have and give him that contract he wants. The financial situation is going to get a little bit more positive in the next few months. Fans are allowed back in the stadiums now. The world is slowly normalizing. You can start to look ahead to better cash flow and hitting these marks. Maybe you can offer Varane that contract that he wants next summer. I would kind of risk it. I think I would look at that as a real thing because I don't know. Varane is just too good to let go.
Because and again, it seems from what we're hearing that Real Madrid could basically earn as much money selling Mendy as they would by selling Varane. So why not sell Mendy, who is more expendable than Varane at this moment? I have nothing against Mendy again, but if this is what we're talking about, if we're talking about making money and trying to fund the signing of Mbappe, I think it'll be worth it. It'll be way better to sell Mendy rather than selling Varane, because I think that ultimately Alaba would be better than Mendy in this situation, and that way you can also keep Varane and Militao playing in the center of the defensive line.
There was also a bit of insurance too with the left back spot, given that Miguel Gutierrez looks really good. But just going back to Marcelo for a second, Lucas, I think it's a matter of you can't really get rid of him. And I think we're going to go into next season with him just being the backup left back. Whereas I think if Zidane was here, we'd probably see less and less of Marcelo, just because he'll put everyone he can there before Marcelo, including Nacho, including Alaba. He'll just shift it. I think Ancelotti may use Marcelo more than Zidane did, just because it just suits the way Ancelotti likes to play. I'd like to be wrong on that, by the way. So
yeah, well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but I don't see Marcelo as a useful player next season at all. So we'll have to wait if Ancelotti is actually going to use him or not. But I don't think he'll be of any big help next season, no matter whether or not Ancelotti wants to play with more possession, or if he's actually a better fit for Ancelotti than he was for Zidane. But ultimately, I think that Marcelo is way on his decline, and he won't be as useful no matter the minutes he's given.
Harsh Varela says, let's go back in time to the summer of 2018 during the FIFA World Cup. Modric had a great campaign, and afterwards, he as well as the team had a disastrous 2018-2019 season. It was blamed on the burnout players felt after the previous season, plus the hectic World Cup schedule. Now in present, Modric and Benzema and Kroos and many more important players had a busy season and summer filled with international duty. Do you guys think the same thing is happening, and how can the management try to mitigate that effect?